Right, welcome back to the Me, Myself, and Hopefully You podcast. I'm your host, Tarek, a 19-year-old university student currently experiencing a midlife crisis. Why, you might ask? Because I've got no idea what I want to do with my life, like probably most of you in this pandemic. But rather than see a therapist, which I probably should do, I decided to start a podcast where I interview guests from around the world to discuss their life and maybe the problems that they've been experiencing during the pandemic or anything else. And in an attempt to learn about their life, hopefully I can learn something about mine too. So if you can relate, or maybe you just want to see where I end up, join me right here on YouTube every Sunday at 7 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest at this time is a believer, a dreamer, and most importantly, a doer. She took a pause from her education at one of the greatest universities in the world, Harvard, to pursue her dream to get the world to stop scrolling and start living. She is the CEO and founder of Clyx, a platform which is looking to take the world by storm and revolutionize the way we interact, allowing us to be social in an ever constant antisocial environment. And she did all this by the time she reached 21 years old. Please join me in introducing Alyx van der Vorm. So, Alyx, I just want to sort of start off by asking you some quick fire questions, like I normally do with my guests, just to sort of get to know them a bit more. The first thing, it might be a completely random question, but what is the last photo on your camera roll?
The last four on my camera rolls probably full pictures of the gym and the beach. So I'm currently in Cancun, trying to get to Boston. So I'm quarantining here
Oh, okay. Where was that again? Sorry, where you're currently in?
in Cancun, Mexico.
Wow, you're in Mexico. That's crazy. I'd love to go to Mexico.
Yeah,
Um, my next question is, who would you say is your number one role model?
this is a very good question and one I haven't put much thought into. Um, I would say I stray from having one specific role model because I think there are a lot of different lessons you can
Hmm.
learn from a lot of different people. Um,
But if I had to push you for one,
yeah, when
I
I was
always
Yeah,
push
I'm
for
sure
it.
you do. When I was a kid growing up, I was always a big fan of Meredith on Grey's Anatomy, which isn't exactly an in real life model, but
Right.
I was always very inspired by her kind of dedication to her work, as well as the fact that she
Mm.
managed to remain quite social
Yeah.
and pivot in difficult situations.
All right, brilliant. I mean, that kind of relates to sort of what you do, I guess, about how you manage to have work really hard but still maintain a social life. That's kind of the reason behind a lot of the things that you do. But we'll get onto that later. The final quick fire question is: if you were in a house fire and everyone was safe, right? Everyone survived, but you could only save one thing. What would it be? One
I
item.
think, yeah, good question. I think I would save my roller because I used to be a competitive runner, and without my roller, I'd be nothing. So either my roller or my running shoes would definitely come with.
Oh, okay. What's a roller?
It's kind of like a circular cylinder that
Yeah.
runners use to roll their calves and quads. It prevents
Oh, a
injury.
foam roller. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, foam roller.
Ah, okay, yeah, all right, fair. Yeah, I run it as well, but I mean, I'm sure you're a million times better than I am. But we'll get into it as straight away. Sort of the first thing I'd like to do is just sort of introduce yourself and Clyx and your app to the audience who don't know you or might not be as familiar with you.
Yeah, awesome. So obviously my name's Alyx. I'm actually Dutch ethnically, though I grew up in London. And my dad lives in France, so super European. I then went to boarding school in the UK, was very sciencey, and then I went to study neuroscience at Harvard. I took a year off before going to Harvard, and on my gap year, I ran marathons competitively, and I also worked for a subdivision in the UN, subdivision of the UN in Togo, focusing on human rights and unfair imprisonment, which was very engaging. And then at Harvard, I studied neuroscience with a minor in CS and government. And I'm 2.5 years in and I'm taking time off. And it was really into my time at Harvard that I had two key insights that are what led to the genesis of Clyx. Those being, which I often talk about, those being that I looked around me and I saw that people really weren't that happy. And I wondered what the cause was. And I realized that it was social media wasn't making them more social. In fact, they'd spend so much time scrolling when they could be out hanging with their friends. And when they scroll, they compare themselves, they judge, they feel judged. And I was really realizing this and the fact that the current social networks just report on moments that made me realize there's room in the market and space and a need for an app that helps actualize moments. And so Clyx really came from a place of wanting to help people make more of the moments they love with the people they love, rather than spending time just voying.
Yeah, I mean, I did come across the app. One of your team members sort of told me about it, and I started looking at the website and learning more about it. Your motto is stop scrolling, start living. I mean, I love that motto. And that is sort of what you just sort of said, is you noticed that people were scrolling on social medias, on Instagram, YouTube, whatever, but they weren't living life. They were almost being social. They were almost being social, but also antisocial at the same time, because of this constant,
Precisely.
scrolling kind of world that we live in. Like, we all scroll for like an hour on Instagram, but if I told you, can you remember one thing that you scrolled through on Instagram, you just be like,
Precise.
no, I can't remember. And that's not living, like you sort of said. But what sort of, at Harvard, you're at one of the most elite universities, one of the most elite schools in the world, but you decided to sort of go, you know what, I'm going to do something else because I know it's a problem right now. That is a very big decision to make, especially because it probably took you a lot of work to get into the school, and to sort of go, nah, my calling is something else. What sort of made you go, yeah, I've got to get out of this. I've got to chase my dream. What was
Agreed.
it?
Super good question. So I did. Getting into Harvard was the one thing I really wanted my whole life. It was the best day of my life getting in. I worked harder than I can even remember to get in. So leaving is a very rogue choice. But what it was really understanding the pervasive kind of misery that I believe this was causing. And misery is a very strong word, but over 78% of people report that after using social media, they feel insecure or not good enough. And through like a wide variety of my friends either have subsequent eating disorders or anxiety disorders or depression, and seeing that so much, although of course not all, is rooted in social media and their comparison of what they believe to be other people's perfect lives, and sucking the time to live their own best life, made me realize that this is a problem I didn't want to wait to fix, because I believe the time is now. I think people generally realizing that social media can have negative implications, that maybe it's not the best use of their time. I'm sure some of your friends have said they're going on an Instagram detox and the like. And realizing that the timing was now for a player to come in and really mix up the space and try and cause a social movement and take advantage of the current social movement to do some good, is what made me realize there's no time to wait.
And so how? So before I go into more about Clyx, what was the sort of reaction your parents and your friends sort of gave when you went, yeah, I'm just going to drop out of one of the best universities in the world, to do this crazy thing and be an entrepreneur at 21, a very young age, to just go on and be extremely independent. School, college, university, they keep you in a nice safe bubble until you're a bit older. You just sort of went, you know what, I'm gonna do one of the best in the world, and I'm gonna go out on my own. What sort of what was the reaction to that?
Yeah, so this question actually prompted me to remind myself that my role model is actually my dad. And this is very
Oh,
much
okay.
emphasized in that his answer, I think he barely really acknowledged it and just humorously responded, well, of course, all the most best performing Harvard people leave halfway through. Look at Bill Gates, look at Mark Zuckerberg. We all knew it was going to happen. And I thought that was quite funny because he was very kind of just relaxed about it. However, my mom took more of a, well, no, obviously you're going back. And she's a huge fan of Clyx, and I so appreciate her support, and she couldn't believe more in the mission. And so I said to her, if you believe all these great things about what's going to happen and how much change I can invoke, how on earth will I have time to do college as well? She said, no, you can manage it. You can just manage it. And so it was kind of a real, she just she couldn't accept it. She
Yeah, she
thought
wouldn't
it
accept
was
it.
amazing and she wanted everything. I had to explain to her that you can't have both. So that is still quite contentious. But on my dad's side, he's pretty happy with it.
Yeah. So he was all into the dream, like Bill Gates, Zuckerberg. They left, went on to do great things, and he believed sort of you straight away. I mean, I'm sure your mum believed you as well, but I think your mum sort of saw that Harvard was the safer option. It was a great university.
Yeah,
You'll get a job at the end of it. Like, you'll get a salary at the end of the year. Whilst with this, you're going out on your own. And so as a 21-year-old, were you 21 when you started this process?
no, I was probably 20, just before
20.
21.
Okay. So you would have only been a year older than I am right now. And I can't imagine me just going, you know what, forget university. I'm gonna go set up my own company. I mean, I guess I started this podcast, but I can do this on the side. With setting up your own company and on wanting to do what you want to do, you had to drop out. At that young age, how did that feel? Because you're entering a big man's world, and I say man because it is, a big man's world, and you're a 20-year-old, essentially a 20-year-old girl.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, first of all, I haven't officially dropped out. I've taken time off, and luckily Harvard are very flexible with how long I would have to complete it optionally.
Yeah.
But in terms of man's world, I think what Clyx is trying to do is kind of revolutionary, and we're really trying to mix up the space and mix up the current way we schedule things with our friends. And I think, in my opinion, there's no one better suited than someone who isn't from someone who's maybe naive to actually mix it up, and to get people to listen and people to think twice. So I would say I'm probably better placed than a big man in this big man's world.
That is true. Yeah, you are probably better placed than sort of the corporate man in a suit, or even the corporate woman in a suit that doesn't know as much about social media, doesn't know the effects of sort of social of constantly being on social media. So I want to ask you about Clyx specifically. So what does Clyx actually do? So say the app, obviously the app hasn't been released yet, but when I open the app, what is it going to do for me? Or
Yeah.
What is it?
So the way I like to describe it to people in my generation is it's essentially Tinder, but instead of swiping on other people, you're swiping on things to do with your friends. And this is really where the idea came from for me. So many of my friends were on Tinder and Bumble and Hinge, and I just found it so boring swiping through other people when I didn't want to meet someone online. I just thought, I wish I knew which of my friends were around, who was available to do something with me. I want to go to the gym, and I always go alone, but there must be someone I just don't know about. And there are only really 2 friends we can text daily on WhatsApp. I'm sure there's a remainder of around 20 to 30 for most people who we'd love to do stuff with, go for dinner, go for a coffee, study in the library, but we fall out of touch because we assume the person's busy, we don't have time to communicate. So this app is really going to be a touch point for all of that, and say a menu where you can open the app and see today, tomorrow, next week, this weekend, which of your friends are around to do what, who's looking for someone to join them on these activities. And then when there's specific things you want to do, you can post a card, and that card could be running Sunday morning, who's available, or Alyx wants to go to Soul Cycle. And then you'll choose who you send this card to. The default will be to all of those people in your close friends list on Clyx. We presume to be the optimum number. Or you can send it to your sports circle, which the algorithm will be able to know which small number of people you generally like doing sports with. Or you can just target it to a few. But you send this card, that card will be in their deck of the people you send it to, and they can swipe yes or no. If they swipe no, no friction, it was just a simple question. If they swipe yes, you have someone to join you on a spontaneous moment you wouldn't otherwise have.
See, I love that. Spontaneity. If there's one thing the pandemic taught me, it was about spontaneity and just sort of, we've not got everything in the world to do now. So many things have shut down. Let's just go for a walk. So I'd message my friend and I'd go, oh, do you want to go for a walk? And we'd go for like a 4-hour walk. And I remember at the end of it, we said to each other, we were like, why haven't we been doing this, known each other? Like, 100%. Just have that sort of spontaneous sort of, activity. There's so much, even outside the pandemic, there's so much stuff to do. And so we all just sort of sit there and we wait for someone to make plans with us. I was that person. I would always wait for someone else to make plans with me. And I got to a point where I started feeling sorry for my plans with me. So I went, you know what? I'm gonna start making plans by myself, and I'm gonna start asking other people. And if they say no, that's fine. And what I noticed is you weren't even your close friends, or do you want to go do this? And they'll be so shocked by it, but then they'll be so intrigued, and they'll be like, yeah, let's do it. Like, we barely know each other, but let's get to know each other. And that's why I like this app. The sound of this, and that's why I really wanted to get you on when Jonathan told me about it, because I said this is the sort of thing that the world, not only right now, but also after the pandemic, really needs something where people can be social in an environment that is essentially antisocial.
100%. And it's really that pandemic environment, like you say, the reason you started texting your friends to go for a walk is because the barriers that were previously in place weren't. And what are those barriers? Maybe you assumed he was busy, maybe you assumed he was at work, maybe you assumed he had better things to do. And Clyx is really trying to remove that deficit and that communication deficit and that towards putting yourself out there. Because in essence, Clyx will be the suggester.
Exactly. Like, it was that, and what I like about Clyx is it sort of is removing that barrier, and it removes that awkwardness of asking someone to do something, because now we can all sort of, because no one wants to go on their social media and put up, oh, I'm free to do this, does anyone want to do it? Because it's like, oh no, that's awkward, that's cringy, that's whatever. By having this app, you can almost do it in an anonymous way, but also do it in a way that people know that's you. And then, like, if you want to go to the gym on Sunday or if you want to go for a walk, you can just put it there, and then you can get someone that maybe is really close with you or not so close with you, and that's a friendship that you've made. And again, that's exactly correlates with your sort of motto of living, because living is also about developing relationships, which is why I started this podcast. I wanted to create relationships. I wanted to learn more about other people. So I sort of moving on from that. I know you don't have all the time in the world, so I'm trying to rush it a bit. I apologize for the listeners if it's been really quick, but I am very excited as well. You can't just sort of drop out or leave Harvard for a bit and create an app. You need funding for it. So Jonathan told me more about the Series A funding that you've been doing. I suppose I didn't do business. What's Series A funding?
Yes. So the way business works, and currently we're actually in our Series A, is you have multiple stages, and different companies call different stages different things. Seed round or angel round is where it starts, and that tends to be a friends and families round, normally in startups, and it is anywhere really under $200K. It's really just enough. It can be anything from $10,000, depending on what you're doing, to $200,000 or pounds. And that's really an app just to kind of get some proof of concept, get something in the works. And then typically after that, you do a seed round, which can be anything from, say, 1 to 5 million, though these numbers are very subjective and different people will call different rounds different things. And then when you get to Series A, that round tends to be more around a 5 mil to 10 mil size.
Okay, wow.
And then Series B, C, D, it gets bigger. And generally post Series D, a company would say IPO or just
Sorry, you cut off there at IPO.
Yeah, so generally around Series D, a company would either IPO or be self-sufficient and their company would be profitable and hence not need funding. And we're currently at seed stage, so we're pre-Series A.
So and how does that feel then? So you're about to get into Series A, that big leap. Again, you're still extremely young, 21 years old. To do this is pretty incredible. And the figures that we're talking about, you sort of mentioned 1 million, 2 million, etc. That's a lot going in, and these people are investing not only in sort of Clyx but also you. How are you dealing with that sort of pressure right now, and how are you going to deal with it in the future, do you think?
Yeah, so I remember before I signed my first investor, my first check, the night before, when I realized this person was actually wiring money the next day, I got massively cold feet. I went to my mom. I was like, "You don't understand. People putting their money in me. It's on me. Like, it's only on me. There's no one else who's responsible for this." And I think in that moment, it was very overwhelming, and that you really understand someone's putting their faith in you. And although I have faith in myself, you also understand that any startup really depends on a lot of luck and a lot of public support, which is what Clyx is hoping to garner. So at first it was very overwhelming, and I realized there were things beyond my control. But then I realized these people are experienced, investors investing in companies like this, they've done it before. They know what to look for. When they have faith in someone, it's for a reason. So it kind of went from overwhelming to validating and kind of reaffirming, because I realized I must be doing something right if people can have so much faith to risk their hard-earned dollars on me. But I'm sure the bigger the funds get, the more overwhelming it will become also.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, you do come up, like, especially when you're talking about Clyx, and even when your fellow team members were talking about it, they're very passionate about Clyx, and about what you want to do and why you want to do it. And I think that is probably helping why people are willing to fund it, because they go, this girl really knows what she's talking about. This is something that's targeted at her demographic, and it's something that, I mean, she was willing to partially drop out of Harvard. I'm gonna say drop out of Harvard. It just sounds better. She dropped out of Harvard for it. Yeah, like, it's sort of, it shows that you're willing to take the risk and that you genuinely believe in it. You're not someone that's just going, yeah, I've got this, give me a load of money. You're saying, look, I genuinely believe in it. And it definitely comes across, and I hope it comes across to everyone listening and watching.
Thanks, sir. You can use drop out as long as my mum doesn't listen to this.
Brilliant. Yeah, so my next sort of one of my final questions is at what stage are we at? I know you sort of said it's in the seeding stage before the Series A funding stage. What stage, or how far are we away from it being similar to Clubhouse, which is a new app that sort of come back? I'm not familiar with it. It's not available on Android yet, apparently, which is a bit stupid, but okay. It's not available on Android, so I'm not familiar with it yet. But what stage are we at from it to be releasing for it to be released to the general public?
Yeah, so where we're at isn't actually that dissimilar from Clubhouse. We hope to launch our private beta on the 1st of April, and that basically means you need an invite or you can't download the app.
Mm.
And then we'll be releasing it in waves to people on our ever-growing waitlist, and they will be able to invite their friends. So they'll have, like Clubhouse, a handful of invitations each, though obviously more, as we want to make sure they have people in their circles to connect with. And so that will happen around April when people will be able to get an invitation. And then when we actually put it on the App Store and it's available for anyone and everyone to download, I really couldn't say. I would say probably, though, if I had to estimate, maybe 3 to 4 months from now, maybe less, depending on how the iteration goes and how that process goes. But I think at the beginning it'll be quite helpful to have it as a waitlist only app, as it helps people really get to know it and get accustomed to using it and inviting people and understanding that this is really an app that is designed to connect with the people you meet up with. I was actually having a great conversation with our product manager this morning about how at the beginning you can't be friends on Clyx unless you've actually done something together in person, and that's how we're getting to the waitlist really.
Oh.
You both done this activity, you can't be friends. So it's really emphasizing that you should pick carefully who you're friends with on Clyx, to avoid precisely the point you made a minute ago, which is you don't post on Facebook saying, I want to go to the gym. Why? Because you probably have a bunch of people you don't know all that well and are either shy to post or don't want them to answer. And Clyx is really meant to be a platform for your nearest and dearest. And I think opening up slowly will really emphasize that.
Brilliant. My final question, before I let you go, because like I said, I know you're busy, is, I mean, this sort of question I normally ask, someone that's in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I had someone that was 70 that I asked this question. So I'm going to sort of change the question. I normally ask them what advice would they give to their 15-year-old younger self. Sorry, they're 15 years younger. 15-year-old younger self, but that was only a few years away from you. So I'm not going to ask that, but I'm going to ask, as someone that, the majority of my audience is sort of young people, a lot of them going to university, a lot of them have no idea what they want to do sort of with their life. And I understand if you yourself still don't know what you want to do with your life, even though you've got this sort of amazing idea. What advice would you give to someone that's still searching for their clicks or for their idea that will help them drop out or, find what they want to do?
Yeah, so I would have two main pieces of advice. The first would be, I was in that situation just this time last year. I had good grades, I had interest in my subjects, but just no idea how that could translate into the real world. And I saw people around me, on the pre-med track, etc., becoming journalists, knowing what they wanted to do, and it was really unnerving because I just had no idea. And I thought, I haven't decided in 21 years what's going to change. So I really like to emphasize to the watchers that are in that position that it will change. Life works in mysterious ways, and if you follow your path, something right will fall into it. So just wait for that to happen. And then on the other hand, I would say, don't be afraid to try something. Someone gave me a really great piece of advice a few days ago, which was, if you're too scared to break something, don't bother starting. And one really needs to accept in whatever journey one takes in life, be it entrepreneurship or other, that one will make mistakes, but part of these mistakes are part of an iterative process that leads to success. And people are so keen to point to their failures, but they should remember that successes that either underlie or follow those failures. So the only way to be sure you'll fail is if you don't start. So if you have an idea or something you're passionate about, there's literally nothing to lose in going out there and doing it. And I couldn't emphasize that enough to anyone watching.
100%. I mean, I feel like we're quite similar in that sense. Like, that's why I started this podcast. I mean, another member of your team, Ben, sort of asked me, I'm telling more about the podcast. The whole point of the podcast was because I had no idea. I enjoyed the subject that I'm doing, but I just want to know what I want to do after that. And I see all my friends or other people that know what they want to do. They want to be a doctor, they want to be a journalist, they want to go into media, they want to be a computer scientist, etc. And I was just like, I don't know what I want to do. So I decided I want to start this podcast. It's a brand new podcast. I want to start it so I can hear about other people's stories. And in an attempt to learn more about them, I can learn more about myself. And that's my sort of process through it. And that's why I wanted to get you on. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Alyx. I've really enjoyed having you on. I will leave sort of all the descriptions to the sign up list or the waiting list for the app. But yeah, thank you very much, Alyx.
Thanks, Tarek. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you. And this podcast is so inspiring. I couldn't think of a better way to try and work out what you want to do. But thank you so much for having me.
Brilliant. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you guys sign up to the waiting list linked in the description box. I can't wait for it to be released. I've already signed up. I signed up the minute I heard about it. Before I even knew I was getting a leaks on the podcast, I'd already signed up. I'm really excited. I think I probably mentioned in previous podcasts about probably how I don't know how to describe it. How the world is obviously at a standstill right now, and no one knows what to do. But we're getting closer and closer. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We just need to keep hope, and hopefully, once we are out of this situation or we're in a better situation than we're in now, we can meet up with friends. Or we can meet up with new friends. This app is going to allow us to do those things that we've been scared to do alone. So it might be just to go for a walk because we don't like to be on our own when we're going for a walk. Or maybe we wanted to jump, we've always wanted a gym buddy, but we're always a bit too scared to ask someone directly. Well, with this app, we can find a person. I know for myself, I'll probably use it for something like running. I've always wanted to run with other people, but I don't really want to like go up to them and be like, oh, do you want to run together? Because it just feels a bit weird. But yeah, so make sure you check it out. The link is in the description box. But if you did enjoy this episode, please leave a comment, hit that like button, and share it with your friends, people. Share it on your story. It does make a difference. Share it, tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone. This is a great story of a very inspiring woman to drop, well, she didn't drop out of Harvard, but to take a pause in her Harvard degree is a pretty big step, and it deserves to be listened to, which I'm sure it will when once Clyx becomes even bigger. But other than that, thanks for your time, everyone. Have an amazing week. Until next time.